Hey everybody, welcome to the 50th episode of Teal Tinted Glasses. Tonight we are joined by, tonight we are joined by, as you can see, Mr. Zakk the Bear, who is going to come and give us some insights on the prospect scrimmage. And also with us tonight, as pretty much always, is Mr. Hockey Jerk. Jerk, I can start with you. Say something to the people.
So a couple things. Number one, I didn't realize that it was our 50th show tonight, and I'm kind of irked that I didn't have a commemorative patch to wear on my sweater, but it's okay. Life goes on. And number two, the Jerk studio has been moved to the gates of hell because, my God, the Bay Area is hot this week.
Oh, it's amazing. Zakk, it's been a while. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. And I, too, did not get the commemorative silver stick for the 50th
episode. I'm going to have to figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible whatever I am.
We'll have the guys down at graphics throw something together.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right. Yeah. We'll figure out something. That'll be awesome. All right. So might as well get down to it. Friday night was the prospect scrimmage, something that we have enjoyed covering in the past. It's kind of like, this is like our 2 weeks, like the draft and then the prospect scrimmage, and then we're just like every other show again. I think that's fair, right?
That's probably a fair assessment.
Yeah. All right. So I guess just overall thoughts on the scrimmage, Zakk. What did you think of the scrimmage overall?
You know, overall, and I've got to, take a little bit of a step back and talk a bit about the Sharks draft that I thought was okay. Ryan Merkley, obviously, the big news that something that we've been talking about for years now is the Sharks trying to swing for the fences on talent. And they took the second most talented defender in the whole draft. I'm not sure he knows he's a defenseman. I think overall Ryan Merkley is an incredibly skilled offensive player with the puck on his stick, but there's somebody in his zone that wears a mask that he's not sure what he's doing there. And so he's a little suspicious when he goes back there, I think. We've been complaining about not getting enough talent in there. And I think you look at who the Sharks have been able to assemble with a bunch of late round picks and a couple trades and even a couple of the invites to camp. And I think you have to be pretty pleased with what the scouting department and Doug Wilson have put together here for the future. It's some really interesting players that really have a good chance to crack the lineup.
Yeah, and then and that's actually, it's interesting you bring that up because like the first thing that I thought about the Merkley pick was like, this is not a Tim Burke pick. No. And then today it's announced that Tim Burke's going to AGM and Doug Wilson Jr. is taking over as director of scouting. Hopefully, I mean, if that's, if this is a Doug Wilson Jr. pick, and it seemed like that from the video the Sharks put out, but you always got to be careful of these videos because they're obviously highly edited and you don't really see, you're not seeing the whole conversation. You're seeing a presentation of parts of a conversation. But I mean, if this is, if this is the Sharks kind of turning over a new leaf, I'm excited about it.
I think definitely, if you're really going to, and we've seen some teams that have over the years had a lot of success, picking late. It seems like Tampa Bay just finds, somebody, that fell or people kind of slept on. Braden Point, is a prime example. I thought he was a second rounder, but now you look at what he's producing, like he should have been in the top half of that first round.
Yeah.
So even the folks that are not afraid of younger players or the analytics, kind of the deep dive as opposed to, the 6'2" bang crash north south good character guy kind of stuff. Even we have them, and I gently place myself humbly in there, a little bit lower than what Tampa's able to do. But if the Sharks really start swinging for these players that, have the offensive upside to play the new NHL, and a lot of these players do. They're not as big, but they're fast, they're quick, they think fast, they get the puck up the ice. I think that overall bodes well.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, and I'll let you say, Dirk, I didn't mean to cut you off, is it seems like for a long time, and I'm not saying this is the same for all draft picks, but I mean Merkley can skate.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
I
like
think
the wind.
Yes, and you're starting to see, like, thankfully the Sharks kind of moving away from we'll teach him how to skate picks.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the new NHL, I just feel like that's not, if you can't teach that, if you can't actually follow through and teach that guy to skate, then you're just wasting picks at this point. Dirk, what was your thoughts on the shuffling in the head office?
Well, and you know what, I really like it because it's been well documented that there have been some drafting blunders with Tim Burke at the helm, and I mean that's not to say that every pick that he's ever made has been bad, but there's definitely been its fair share of not so great picks, and just watching that shaping the Sharks as edited, like you said, as it was to kind of present the good sides of things. It's definitely encouraging, listening to the things that Doug Wilson Jr. was saying and how they're kind of attacking, drafting and free agents and trades and that kind of thing. And, between him and between Doug Wilson Sr. and, just like any articles, interviews, whatever, since the draft, the Sharks appear to be going towards a strategy of, yes, drafting for how the NHL is now, but also drafting for what the NHL might be like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I really think it's good. It's a good strategy to have, because if you flash back to these big defensemen that the Sharks picked up, in the mid 2000s, sure, at the time they were an attractive piece, but then, once the 2010s comes and it's all about speed, and these guys are, out of their element as soon as they were drafted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see, like I said, that mindset of like, okay, well, how's this guy going to work for us in 3 years? How's he going to work for us in 4 years, or 10 years if you want to get really extreme? And I think it's a smart mindset to have, and I think Doug Wilson Jr. is the perfect guy to kind of have making those decisions. So just based on the things he was saying in that video, it made me feel good about the pick.
And the bigs that they are bringing in, they're a different ilk. And I think Jerk made a really good point there that, you look at who they were picking, just absolute lumberjacks back there on the blue line. Now you're seeing the Jacob Middletons,
mm-hmm.
right, who has good feet, who has good size, who makes a smart first pass out of the zone that you're not terrified if he has to handle the puck. Keaton Middleton, his little brother that's 2 inches taller and another 15 or 20 pounds heavier, played an identical game. Too bad one of them's not right-handed. You'd have a really nice twin tower pairing back there. but even the big guys that they're bringing in are fitting that new style. Alex True, that's a hulking, maybe not quite as heavy, but he's 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good amount of skill, a little bit of bang crash in him too. But it's not the Dohertys of the world, right?
Right. The Nick Petreckis, the Tyler Dohertys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, that's something that we've even seen, or at least started to see with the Sharks at the NHL level. I mean, Brendan Dillon is another example. He's definitely a bigger guy. And the big, criticism of him was that he couldn't skate to save his life. And, the last 4 summers, his skating is what he's been working on every summer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a noticeable change in him, especially this past year. I believe he, had a career high in points, and he was noticeably better compared to his first couple of years in Teal. And, I know we've talked about it quite a bit, what kind of players the NHL is looking at. You've got your big, tough guys, and you got the, the little guys who are fast. And then, eventually, we're going to see the NHL, and I've said it before, get to guys like, like Mark Scheifele, like Nathan McKinnon, where they're big bodies, but they're also very fluid skaters. And I think based on the Sharks drafting and then the guys they invited to camp, I think the Sharks have the inside the inside track on kind of getting to where the NHL appears to be going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's a welcome change too, because I think that, I mean, like, I don't, you know, I know we kind of harass the Sharks. It's not like they're completely inept at drafting. Like they've made good picks. Like obviously they're not, you know, completely bad, but and they've gotten better of late. Because I know I don't know if it was me and you, Jerk, or me and Kevin the other night. We're just going through like just previous Shark drafts and just the number of players that never played an NHL game, which kind of has come around as of late. But I couldn't. I mean, I went back and I was looking at some of these names. And I'm like, holy crap. Like just how bad things were for a while. But I'm glad to see that they, you know, that they're moving forward. And if it means that, you know, shuffling the head office is how they get there, then so be it. You know, I don't want to come off as like saying like Tim Burke can't draft at all, because obviously they've obviously made good selection. They found some gems late round. All their early round picks haven't been complete disasters. I mean, maybe Timo Meier's the guy, not the guy we wanted, but I think that's turning out pretty good so far. Obviously Hurdle is Hurdle. Logan is Logan. I mean, you know, it's not like it's been a complete barren wasteland of picks. I don't want anyone to come away from this thinking that we just, you know, completely hate Tim Burke, because I don't think that would be fair. I just think that when you look at some of the picks that they've made, they've definitely, you know, they've definitely been for a game that's not today's game.
Yeah,
and then
they're drafting for tomorrow's game, not yesterday's game.
That's a good point.
Which, and yeah, like I said, if they can be ahead of the curve, then, you know, Sharks are going to be able to have some decent guys that, you know, are going to, you know, like I said, they're going to play big, but they're going to play fast. And, you know, depending on how quick it takes the other teams in the league to adjust, I mean, the Sharks might be able to do some damage if they can take advantage of this now.
Fair enough.
I don't know if they'll be ahead of the curve. You look at Tampa has set the pace there.
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, Toronto started down that road, and then all of a sudden the Mike Babcock types, you know, snuck in there, and now you're kind of scratching your head saying, okay, now what? Obviously picking up a player like John Tavares cures a lot of ills. You know, heck, what can you do?
Just before we get into the game itself, though, I want to talk about just quick. Dylan DeMello gets extended 2 years, 900,000 AAV. What's you guys' thoughts on Dylan DeMello back in the fold?
You know, sure. I like it. You know, I thought he was coming off his best season as an NHL defenseman, and, you know, definitely started out really slow, but then I believe in the month of March, he had, you know, 60% of his points in the month of March. And, you know, his defensive awareness as a whole looks better. And, you know, same thing with Brendan Dillon. He appears to be a better skater. And that third pair was a really good pair just as a whole. Like, there was no, you know, cup final concerns of, oh, we got to send out the third pair, be careful. Like, there were, I know there were many instances, especially in the series, both series against Anaheim and against Las Vegas, where, you know, it's tough, it's crunch time, it's nitty gritty, and the third pair is out there, and I'm not nervous. And I think that's a testament to, yes, Brendan Dillon, but also the work that Dylan DeMello has put in as well. And I think, you know, he gets passed by Roman Polak, he gets passed by David Schlemko, and he finally, you know, gets a chance to get in there. And he was even passed by Tim Heed for a while. And, you know, I think DeMello really cemented himself. And I think he was looking for more money, but ultimately the 2-year deal at a bargain value, I think, for what DeMello was and what he could be, I think it's a good signing for both sides.
Zakk?
So I'm going to go on a tangent, and I'm sure longtime viewers of Teal Tinted Glasses are going to shocked. Hopefully everyone was seated for that. I think the Sharks gambled and won on Dylan DeMello. I think that they made him a UFA, banking on the fact that everyone on the East Coast thinks that no meaningful hockey is played after 10 p.m. Eastern. Nobody's paying attention, because the leverage that he would have had as a restricted free agent, you know, and bargaining for that with the advanced stats that he has, the fact that he was a fifth defender that somehow got, you know, slotted in, you know, into 7-8. I mean, he was better than Polak. He's better than Schlemko. he's a player that they've literally given every opportunity to fail, and somehow, despite it, has forced himself into the lineup. That dollar amount, if they had left him as an RFA, was going to be well north of $1 million.
Yep.
And so they gambled and said, you know what? Everyone's asleep on the East Coast. They don't know how good Dylan DeMello is. We think we can go UFA, and if he wants to stay somewhere where he's competitive, he's got a job, he's familiar, and take a decent size raise, we're right here. And so that's what I think happened. I don't have any inside information. Total, I'll call it an educated guess, but you look at how it played out, right? He was out there poking around, wasn't to his liking. Maybe got a similar deal to what he's on. The Sharks said, well, here's a modest increase, maybe not the one you would have gotten from arbitration. I think he was arbitration eligible.
He was arbitration eligible.
Yeah. That arbitration ruling was going to be well over $1 million.
Yep.
You're talking $1.25-ish.
Mm-hmm. So
Sharks save themselves $300,000 for the next 2 years.
And now it creates an interesting discussion because a lot of people have targeted Merkley getting to the NHL 2 years, maybe 3. In that time, specifically in the 2-year time frame, DeMello, Braun, and Brendan Dillon are all going to be unrestricted free agents. So it's going to be interesting to see in a couple years when all those guys are UFA again how it all shakes out. And who knows? I mean, Dylan DeMello, he's not your typical prospect, but he's not ancient either. I mean, I still think there's room to grow there.
Certainly room to get comfortable, and
yeah.
I think all of us would agree that Justin Braun is starting to peter out a little bit. He's not the player he was a couple years ago. I wouldn't mind a Dylan DeMello and Marc-Edouard Vlasic pairing. I think that those are two complementary, very solid styles that could absolutely smother while getting that first good pass up the ice. I like DeMello. He's that's a left-handed, right-handed combo. I think it's a complementary style. I'd really like to see DeMello locked in here. Take these next 2 years to really say, you know what, I might even be a 4.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because I think we definitely all agree he's a 5.
Yeah,
he's easily a 5. Yeah.
And even I know he had no goals this year, but I think too his shot from the point is definitely not talked about as much as it probably should be. And I think especially in that 2-year time period, he gets more time on the power play, more time 5 versus 5. I mean, like you said, Zakk, the opportunity to get comfortable and get yourself set, it's there.
Right.
It's just a matter of if he can continue to reach for that metaphorical brass ring, and so far it's indicated that he is going to do that. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
And let's remember that Peter DeBoer does not exactly have the greatest track record of patience with young players. So Dylan DeMello is clawing onto a roster spot. I wouldn't be surprised if he was gripping that stick just a little too tight. Knowing that Paul Martin might just be a Brent Burns meltdown away from taking my job, despite the fact that I'm clearly playing it.
Right. Yeah, I think, there's a lot of good things that you guys said there. I think that, we've seen kind of the Sharks really, the Sharks are ruthless with their RFAs, man. They are absolutely ruthless. So I think that absolutely, just letting him, not giving him the QO, taking away his arbitration rights, knowing that he'd probably still be there when they came back around to him, that wouldn't surprise me at all. We saw them last year. Now it might bite them this year if they can't get a deal done. They go to arbitration. But we saw the same thing last year with Chris Tierney. Chris Tierney, like I said on the last show, Chris Tierney had one option: sign his qualifying offer and play, or sit at home, because he wasn't getting any more money, and he had no arbitration rights last year. That might bite them a little bit this year, because I think that there's probably a little bit where Chris Tierney's kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna make some money now. And then when you look at dumb teams like Edmonton driving up the cost of a third-line center.
I knew we were going to talk about that at some point.
It makes me a little bit. I know. But if if Ryan Strome is worth $3 million, then what's Chris Tierney worth? And that question hurts my head because
don't ask Drew Weber that question.
I'm not going to ask Drew Weber that question. Drew Weber's banned from the show until Chris Tierney's signed. I've decided.
Drew would name his favorite Brinks truck after Chris Tierney.
But I think when you the Sharks have been absolutely ruthless with their RFAs, and I think they have to be. You guys talked about Justin Braun. I've long been on the train that Justin Braun's going to be the odd man out once it's time to pay him again, because the money's not going to be there. You have all these guys locked up long term. I don't think they're done building the front end of the core. So there's no way there's going to be money left on the table for Justin Braun and probably what he's going to want going forward. And Justin Braun's not exactly a young dude anymore. I mean, he's not ancient, but he's not, he's one of those guys that isn't as young as people think he is at this point, because we just think that, our team lives in a bubble where no one ages. I know I get caught there sometimes. So, I mean, yeah. Jesus.
But it is going to come down to that business decision, right? You're going to have that right-handed spot open.
Yep.
You're going to have Dylan DeMello, might be a UFA. And so, okay, so he goes, you played well the last 2 years. Here's your show me deal, right? That first year, like, here's 2 years for 4.2.
Absolutely.
Right? So which would, even looking at Braun now, that's a deal. So definitely. That's where that's going to end up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the DeMello deal. I mean, the money, you can't argue with the money. I think, and it's the devil I mean, the Sharks could have easily, went out and grabbed like a bargain basement Luke Shen. And I think that Dylan DeMello is the way to go if you look at those two players.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Luke Shen's making 100,000 left, but I mean, again, this is the it's the devil. We've seen what that pair can do between him and Dylan, and why would why mess with something that you've got set? The unfortunate thing I would guess is for Tim Heed, because I don't know where Tim Heed fits on this team anymore at this point. I mean, yeah, he could be the 7th D, but one has to expect the Tim Heed experiments coming to an end at some point, whether he sticks the whole year or not. I mean, next year he'll be a UFA. I can't see Tim Heed re-signing to sit in the press box.
And it's really unfortunate because, that year that the Barracuda went to the Western Conference Final, Tim Heed won a lot of people over. I mean, remember Howitzer Heed, and remember, him going out there with Joachim Ryan. I mean, those were some good times, but unfortunately, the offensive side of his game hasn't translated to the NHL, but realistically, though, the defensive side of his game has always had some question marks surrounding it. And at least in my viewing of him, he definitely benefited from playing with Joachim Ryan 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, him and it's just the reality is him and Brendan Dillon aren't really a good fit together.
Right.
But
you know what? He still put up 11 points in just 29 games, and for really, an NHL rookie, right? That wouldn't even qualify for a rookie year yet.
Yeah,
right.
So, Dylan is a player. You got to find. That's why they're pairs, right? You got to find two players that play well together. So Dylan isn't Tim Heed's cup of tea, or vice versa. Fine. There are a number of defenders that are going to plug in very well with Tim Heed in the NHL. I wouldn't be surprised if he quietly asked for just a trade. Doesn't want to make a big deal, but like, hey, I just like a playing opportunity. Maybe a bit like how Troy Grosnick, I'm here, but if the opportunity presents itself, please explore it.
Yeah.
And we talked about potentially seeing Dylan DeMello with Marc-Edouard Vlasic. I think Tim Heed with Marc-Edouard Vlasic would be an interesting kind of pair to look at as well. But again, like you said, Zakk, I think it's got to the point where a trade is probably the best option, and it's not really anybody's fault per se. It's just a matter of circumstance.
I mean, you can't, unless you're going to dress unless you're going to just start dressing 7D a night and playing Tim Heed exclusively on the second power play unit. I don't know what else you can do with them at this point.
I mean, as weird and kind of interesting at the same time it would be to see. I mean, there were times where the Sharks did have a seventh defenseman play on the fourth line. Not saying that's even a realistic or legitimate option, but I think it would be interesting to see.
Actually, we could have Tim Heed and Jacob Middleton as the fourth pair, have a spare winger, and that solves the fourth line center problem because there isn't room for a fourth line center.
I like it.
We'll just roll 3 lines.
3 lines.
Yeah. We're a great coaching staff. All we need are jobs.
Please
okay, so I want to get into the prospect game itself, since we've been kind of just beating around it for 25 minutes now. So Jeremy Waugh wasn't at camp, or was he there but just not healthy enough to do anything?
He's there at camp. The knee's not good to go. Still rehabbing from the injury he sustained last year with the Barracuda.
Okay.
We've talked about it. I know you two gentlemen have talked about it as well. It is no stretch whatsoever to say that his development has been stunted at the very, very least.
Yeah.
He's played, what is it, less than 80 games over the last 3 years?
Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. That's too bad because he looked so good before he got hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say that 2-week period before he got hurt, he was probably the Barracuda's best player on the ice.
Yeah. He was doing exactly what they were hoping for with that 31st overall pick. Brian Fogarty over at Hockey Profits mentioned this about actually during his draft year. He felt that Jeremy Waugh didn't get out of the way of hits. He's not a huge guy, but he just kind of stands his ground and gets hit as opposed to try any kind of evasive maneuvers. And, it's one of those things that I've always kind of remembered. But now, after a couple injuries, you're like, no, that's exactly right. Just not being smart on how to get hit or being too confident or just I don't want to say smart, because, injuries happen. Nobody's trying to get hurt, obviously. Right. So that was a poor choice of words on my end. But just having that little extra tiny tool in his toolbox to assist him better.
Yeah, because it's funny because I kind of another player who I felt had that issue in junior was Darnell Nurse, who would always go in the corner and always get just blown up, and
he's huge.
And he's huge, but it was just the way that he played in the corners, and he's changed that in the NHL. But I don't remember how many times I watched Darnell Nurse go off the ice just crimson mask from getting just run in the corner. And I mean, some of that's just, a guy getting run in the corner. But, again, it comes down to, when it happens once, you're like, okay, well, that guy got run, and that's really crappy. But when you see it happen 4 or 5 times, then you're like, okay, well, what's he doing? What's he not protecting himself? How is he not protecting himself? And it's something that, as I see him playing as a pro now, it's something that he's definitely learned, thank God, because the guys are much bigger in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Jeremy Waugh, I agree with what you're saying, because it's something that I've definitely seen, in defensemen in junior. And then when you don't play, when you miss all that time playing in junior, you don't really have the chance to adapt that out of your game.
Right. He hasn't played more than 46 games in the last 4 years.
That's sad.
3 of them were in juniors, 1 was in the AHL. And I think the Q is on. They're on what, a 66 game schedule?
Sounds about right. I don't have it.
So he missed at least 20 games each year, and then 50 plus, and then another 48 with the Barracuda.
Brutal.
That makes me sad. That makes me sad, Peter. Well, hopefully, by the time camp rolls around, Jeremy Waugh we'll be back up and at 'em. We already kind of went over Merkley, so I don't want to go there. But I do kind of want to talk about just the players that were drafted just in the last draft class, and then we can kind of just pick our favorites and go from there. What did you think of Jasper Weathersby?
I thought he was just kind of there. I didn't feel he didn't really wow me. Obviously we were looking for him. There, big body. Did a couple nice things, but I was just I was whelmed. Just regular whelmed.
Okay. What did you think of the selection when he was picked double overage? Or
I get it because you have a better idea of what you're looking at, right? He's going to be a player that has some a bigger body of work, and I think we're gonna. You get to those latter stages, and I think that's actually a really smart pick because you're not trying to guess on a 17 or 18. You're looking at a guy that's 19, 20 years old, that's got a couple years, and you've seen how he's matured. You see if he's still hungry, still striving, still working. And that helps tell you about the character, and that's obviously a big thing for the Sharks. So I don't mind it, as much there.
Plus, he's going to college, so I mean, that's
right.
You're not trying to plug him in right away or anything like that. Like, he's going to go to college to further develop his game. If he's a late bloomer, like we hope he is, I mean, going to college can really help move his game along before he turns pro.
Definitely, but it's also a double-edged sword of danger, right?
For sure.
Because if he's a late bloomer and steps onto college and is, lights out as a freshman, he might only have to, get a free education before becoming a free agent.
That's true. Yeah. No, I mean, that is the risk with the college players for sure.
Right.
What about Linus Karlsson?
Karlsson, I really came away impressed with. I liked what he was doing on the ice. I liked how he was playing. Good size, needs to fill out a little bit. Right-handed shot. Got a goal there in the game. If that was at least on the second goal. I think so. Yeah. But that's a player that I thought coming from second division was really kind of showed that he's been there before. Even with these younger Europeans, the guys that get a look with the men's senior team, they're just a little bit more ready. They're used to that environment, and I think it shows. Really liked what he has as far as his hockey sense. I thought he showed some real good flashes. It was noticeable through most of the game.
Awesome. Zakk Emon, this is a pick that for me I was really confuzzled about. What was your thoughts on the pick, and how did he play?
Which pick?
Zakk Emon, the goalie.
Honestly, I haven't seen. I don't watch a ton of the Q. So that was really my first glance at him. And so commenting on a goalie after one live viewing, goalies are the darkest of dark arts.
They are.
And, he's really young. He's really thin. He's got to fill out. It's, I don't know, the kids, the goalies that come out of the Q, I feel like that's even somehow even more crazy because they just don't defend in the Q as much. So you look at their numbers and they're meaningless, right? Because everything's run and gun. Liked his body. Generally, I'll notice if somebody's feet are going Alex Stalock on him, like Jake Kupski has a tendency to do. But he was set well, so checking some boxes. I think Josef Kornash is probably out of that pick who I see going forward as relevant to the team. I understand that he's going to probably be with the Barracuda this season, and that's exciting.
Absolutely.
But you look at after that, Mike Robinson, not a fan. Kupski, I feel like the holes in his game still haven't really developed and rounded out. Max Paddock, actually, I thought played pretty well too. That was a similar birthday as Emon.
Yeah, I was Max Pat. I was excited when I saw that he was invited to camp because I really liked. I watched him in the Memorial Cup. I was really impressed by him in the Memorial Cup, and just a guy that just basically came in and stole the job in Regina.
Right.
That was a nice invite to camp for sure. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much of Kupski, but I wasn't a great fan of the pick. The thing with Emon that kind of bothers me is this is a guy who's the backup in Rouyn-Noranda.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be the backup next year. unless if they, make a move, which I don't see them doing. So I don't know. I think that was the more puzzling part for me is you're drafting not only just a goalie from the queue, but a backup goalie from the queue who's going to be a backup, was a backup last year. It's going to be a backup this year coming, and then should, get a chance to be the starter there. I mean, it's a good program in Rouyn-Noranda as far as programs in the queue go. So you like that, but I don't know. It's just weird to be drafting a backup goalie.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Part of it is you got to go with what you've got.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing something out of a young player that you like, he got into 24 games. He had a sub 900 save percentage. That's not good at any level. Again in the queue though, I always take any stat of any variety with a bit of salt out of the
right. Hashtag Q stats, my friends. Hashtag Q stats.
Yeah. To be honest, I think Paddock was probably the stronger of the two. From that one glimpse that I got. But
I'd like to. I don't know. I mean, if John Paddock can do it, or Max Paddock, right, can do what he did in Regina again. I mean, that's hopefully something the Sharks keep tabs on, because that goalie pipeline, she's a dry.
Mm-hmm. But it's you got nobody's usurping Martin Jones for the foreseeable future. Even Aaron Dell. Who the heck are they possibly going to get that's going to challenge, Aaron Dell's job? He's got the exact right demeanor for a backup goaltender. He's happy in San Jose. He's one of those guys that he could be the starter tomorrow and be like, I just play more. That's the only thing,
I'm curious to see what happens though, because I mean, Aaron Dell, obviously, he's a goalie we found in the later years of his career. I'm not saying he's old, but he's not young either. He's like 30-ish now, isn't he?
He's getting towards that. Yeah, 20, might be 29.
Okay. So, I mean, I'd be interested to see what happens if, because we've seen in the Barracuda, we have, we get a good goalie and then we get a bad goalie the next year. So I'm curious to see if Antoine Bibeau can do what he did last year with, the defense still is going to be questionable, but that forward group's going to be exciting to watch. It'd be interesting to see, if Antoine Bibeau gets to challenge Dell at some point going forward. Because again, I think that'd be a cheaper, because the Sharks are going to have to look at cheaper options, right?
Yeah, maybe long term.
Yeah, I'm not saying tomorrow, Aaron Dell's out of here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they gave him, they gave Dell that 2-year extension, and that first year, obviously, I think he'll be, into that backup role firmly. But the second year of that deal, there's nothing saying that he can't have another really good season, and all of a sudden teams are calling him up once again.
It's true. Good point.
Last pick from the 2018 draft class, John Leonard. Anything on him, Zakk?
I honestly didn't even notice him.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
It's fine. I mean, it was another pick where it's an overage +1. Did really put up a lot of points for his team. I think he led UMass in scoring with as a freshman. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him going forward too. But I mean, there's a lot to like about the Sharks picks I found in this draft. They're all they all put up points. Now, granted, putting up points in the BCHL as a 20-year-old, kind of want to raise an eyebrow a little bit to that. But I feel like everyone they took, it was this is the leading scorer on their team. Linus Karlsson, I mean, he was the second leading scorer in his league.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be interesting. I think what'll be interesting for Linus Karlsson going forward is because of where he plays. I'd like to see him try to get on one of his a national team next year.
Right.
I mean, I think that'd be a big boost for him. So just going to kind of just throw some names out here. Actually, let's go with Kotkov first, since that was he just got he just got signed as a free agent, undrafted. This draft was weird. I mean, we saw a lot of people ranked not get drafted, and a lot of people not ranked get drafted. It was a really weird draft this year, especially in the later rounds.
Yeah. I liked the signing. I liked, from I went back, watched some video again coming out of the queue. I heard some folks had him as high as a third round. I had read picks. So the Sharks getting him really for nothing but a couple pieces of paper and a pen in his hand. Got to think that's pretty nice. Right-handed shot, good size at 6'4", 210. Skates really well. I was hoping to see a little bit more, because I've heard, the reports and everyone saying they've been wowed by him all week. This was my first chance to really see the kids in action. So I was hoping to see a bit more. There was nothing that stood out glaring to me. But, for a guy that really just got his first year in North America and, really kind of presented himself well. I don't mind it as at all, especially if you can get a big body, that has that kind of the skill that's piquing your interest and you think is going to translate. Why the heck not?
Yeah.
I was going back and forth with a couple people during the game where they wanted to see some of the other players that the Sharks had drafted as opposed to these tryouts, and I said, no, this is exactly what happens. You throw the tryouts out there because you need to figure out if this, like a Kotkov, do we have to sign him tomorrow morning before another team gives him a call? One of the tryouts, he had actually skated at the another camp the week prior.
Yeah, Kotkov. Yeah, he was in Colorado.
That's right. Okay. Colorado could have called him back, day earlier and maybe signed him, and the Sharks are out. Now they've got, another body that next year, could be ready for the Barracuda, for their playoff run. Key players.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from what I saw, I like the pick. I mean, I looked at the numbers. The numbers are, for a younger guy who's obviously not going to get he's going to get more ice time going forward. I think in Chicoutimi. Chicoutimi's not a great team either. Let's let's put it. Chicoutimi is one of the worst teams in the queue. So I thought for considering the point totals he put up, yeah, they're not amazing, but they're good. I think for the quality of line mates he probably has on Chicoutimi. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on the Chicoutimi Sanguines, but I know that they're not exactly the greatest team in the queue. So it'll be interesting to see, what he does going forward. I think it's definitely a player I'll be keeping tabs on as I try and watch as much junior hockey as possible next year.
And then what about Josh Norris?
Yeah, Josh Norris is where I wanted to go next because I know that was a pick that we bemoaned the hell out of when it happened. Where are we at? Where are we at on Josh Norris?
Same place I've probably always been. I would rather have Ellie Tolvanen.
Sure.
Tolvanen slid 9 or 10 spots from my rankings and then kept going. I mean, I just, Josh Norris has a very good toolbox. I think he has above average tools across the board. The problem is not all of them come out together and at once and in concert. And so part of you is hoping that comes out through maturity. Part of you is saying for a first-round pick, should be a bit better.
Right.
And I'm in the latter camp. I didn't mind the Sharks draft that year. I just felt that it was all over the place. The guys where there was going. Scott Reedy, I thought, he struggled more than I thought he was going to, last year. But, we'll see. Yeah, I feel like these kids, they're, especially last year, Mario Ferraro, I actually had as a dark horse for the Sharks because they had seen so much of him with Adam Parcells as his as his teammate for a couple of years. That's looking to be just a brilliant pick in the second round that I really kind of, harpooned. But that's why I'm on this side of the microphone, I suppose. But I want to see more out of Josh Norris. I want to see it now. I want to see what makes him the first rounder.
Right. Because it seems like, I feel like some people have kind of come around on this pick a little bit. Is this an issue of selection versus the player, like because of where he was taken? Like, if you take where he was taken in the draft out of it, how do you feel like he's come along?
I think he grew. I saw him November, and then again in March with the Wolverines, and he had definitely taken some big steps forward. Also saw him obviously in the World Junior, where I thought played slightly better, but really from like that January tournament to March, I thought really took those steps forward. And a lot of young players, they'll say that, they go home for Christmas, they kind of get that break where they get to breathe a little bit.
Right.
And then they come back to school and find another gear. And so it was good that he followed that very similar path that I've heard so many players, especially at the college game, because you can be playing against 26-year-olds that are seniors, right? Really, I mean, that would be like AHL men, from a physicality standpoint. So
I'm curious to know what you thought about Max Latunov, because I know, especially this past year, I feel like for me anyways, I feel like he kind of slipped a bit under my radar, at least to start. But everything, I'll be honest, I did not see the prospect scrimmage, but everything I read on Twitter sounds like he had a relatively decent outing.
I thought he was very solid. Latunov last year had zero, and actually zero help with the Yukon Huskies.
Right.
Tank Thompson turned pro, and all the offense that helped that team be respectable the year prior just absolutely evaluated. It was the Max Latunov, and the Yukon Huskies. And so it's kind of like what we were saying with Vlad Kutkov or Kotkov. You know how terrible my Russian is.
Okay.
When you have no one around you, it's hard to get the puck and dish the puck and do all those things that your talented players need. But I thought in the prospect game, I talked to Latunov afterwards. He's put on 10 pounds. He's up to at 180. Said he hit the gym real hard. All of his testing was improved from last year, which is good. That's what you want to see. So it's more of a holistic approach. He's bigger, heavier, but also stronger, faster, more nimble, more agile. So all that is trending right. It's going to be exciting, to see what he does his first pro year.
You think he has a realistic chance at being the Sharks 4C this year?
Zero chance.
Okay.
Dylan Gambrell, from a maturity standpoint in his game, I think Latunov is a guy that he's got to have those more skilled players around him. He needs to help him be creative himself. Whereas I think like a Dylan Gambrell, I've always kind of seen him as a bottom six guy, but one with offensive upside. I think Dylan Gambrell can help cement a line as opposed to Latunov, who I don't want to say complimentary player in a negative way, but he's going to complement his teammates, and that in concert is going to bring the skill level of that whole lineup, right? So having some more skilled wingers, some more speed, but it's got to be a bit of more of a match, I think.
So kind of like, to me, so would you kind of liken him to a Chris Tierney in that respect, where I feel like Chris Tierney, if he's he's not going to drive a line, but he's going to be like, if you surround him with the right players, it's going to be a good line, but he can't do it on his own.
That comparison doesn't upset me one bit. I think that's a really smart one.
So Dylan Gambrell, you mentioned, how was Dylan Gambrell, and do you think that he has the inside track on the 4C, or I don't think he was at the camp, but as a guy like Andy Swella, a guy that you might watch there?
I think that's going to be the fight. Gambrell is going to have to probably steal that job. I think the Sharks probably have the Finn penciled in there. Everything that I've read and heard, that that's where the team is leading. Obviously, you go into camp to win jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of them will have it locked down season long. The Sharks hunt for a fourth line center enters its fourth year itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that thing, and DeBoer might have had it with Ryan Carpenter had there been more patience to let that player round out. But a handful of games here and there for a couple seasons, I don't think is really a hell of a look.
No.
And so, do you follow do both of these players follow a similar path there? Right? It's you got to take some lumps. You've got these young players. Maybe Dylan Gambrell, that he was a second-round draft pick. Maybe there's gonna be a little more pressure on DeBoer to have some more patience to actually let that player develop and learn and take his lumps and not end up in the press box.
Yeah, I mean, we only got a little snapshot of games from Gambrell there at the end of the season, but I really liked what I saw, considering you're coming out of college, you just finished a college season, you get eliminated in the trying to get to the frozen to the end of the Frozen Four, and then just to jump in and not really have much in the way of practice with the Peter DeBoer system. I thought there's a couple times where he looked a little bit lost, but I mean, all things considered, I thought he handled himself really well.
Definitely, and I think that as long as he's playing, his style of game and doesn't try to get too cute, right?
Right.
He's got to lock down the defensive side of his game to in a Peter DeBoer system, or else he could very easily find himself on the Ryan Carpenter shuttle. So he's got to play his game, play within it. But play really well, and I think he'll be in the mix. But I think he probably could use a little bit more time in the AHL, especially if Sharks fans want to see that offense develop a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be interesting though, because I mean, there's still I know they've let the Barracuda have let a lot of their, they've kind of let some of their journeyman guys go, but it's still going to be interesting to see who actually ends up lining up at that team this fall, because there's just so many. It feels like there's just so many forwards they have right now, vying for spots there.
I have a feeling the Allen Americans will be very stacked.
I wonder. Yeah, I'm curious. A player that I really liked the signing of, and I thought he had a hell of a Memorial Cup tournament, was Jeffrey Vale. Any thoughts on him? Because I thought he had a hell of a Memorial Cup tournament.
Yeah, I didn't really notice him. I'm looking at my notes here on who other guys that kind of stood out to me, actually. Joe Gattenby.
Okay.
He played with the Blazers out there in the dub.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he played really well. He was a player that I thought that they were really looking hard at. He seemed to be getting a ton of ice time, and I thought he played pretty darn well. Defender. Evan Weiger.
Okay.
Played for Brandon in Portland. I thought he had a nice game. Alex True, that was another one. I'm taking a look at this. More and more, I liked that signing last year, and when I've seen him quite a bit live when he was with Seattle,
right?
Obviously with Team Denmark. I really like the steps he took last year in the AHL. I think that's going to be a really smart pickup that's going to come around in the future for the Sharks. Noah Gregor, I was a little disappointed in. I just felt that some of his decisions with the puck were okay. I was just expecting more.
Yeah, I remember really being enamored with that pick at the time, and
yeah.
I thought Noah Gregor had a really good scrimmage, and then the rookie tournament as well. I thought he did really well in both of those last year. So kind of unfortunate to hear that he's sort of just dropped off a bit.
Yeah, and then the two Russians, Chekhovich and Sasha Chmielewski. I thought both of them had
Chmielewski's American. Thank you very much.
That's true. He's a Ukrainian American, or we hyphenating?
Ukrainian American, yeah. But he's played all his hockey in North America.
Yeah. And then Jaden Hogewatts, I really liked him. He's playing on that top line with with Balsers.
That's the name I wanted to get to next, actually.
Yeah, those two players, they were they kind of got it. Those small, shifty, skilled, quick guys. Everyone had to be on the toes. They were centered by Gambrell, with his real good two-way. That was a really fun line, and they got plenty of looks and definitely got the crowd going with some really nice passing and some great opportunities.
Another draft pick, I can't remember which year, Marcus Villa. There seemed to be a little bit of chatter for him on the Twitter machine. What did you think?
He had a nice game. Was real quiet. Had kind of bursts. He's been playing with New Hampshire out there in Hockey East and done a pretty nice job. 15 points in 33 games last year. But he's a guy that, again, kind of those later rounds, right? That you're finding some hockey players, and he had some flashes, much more noticeable than last year. Last year, I thought he was real quiet. So seeing that positive growth and a little bit more mustard in his game was good. Another tryout forward. Actually, there was a teammate of Dylan Gambrell was Olszewski. I think it's Cohen, Kohn first name. I thought he played really well. I just saw a confident player with the puck, really kind of a north-south honest game, but good amount of skill and quickness to it. Played with a good pace. So that was a nice tryout invite. I was actually pretty impressed with him as well.
It'd be interesting to see because Denver is going to be rough next year.
Yeah, they got decimated, didn't they?
Yeah, they got pretty badly. They lost everyone pretty much all at once. And then obviously you lose some seniors as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what Denver looks like as a program next year. New coach, obviously.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Denver next year. It might be, the reason I bring that up though is because you got a guy like Olszewski, maybe he goes back to school and maybe you can pry him out as a free agent. After the school year is done. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Rudolph Balsers. Obviously I think we all pretty high on Balsers. Do you see is Balsers a guy that you think can threaten for a spot out of camp, or is this going to be like a first call up? He might be the first guy up situation.
I definitely think he could threaten 100%. I think that just with the growth we saw in his game, he's much, much better in his own zone. He's much better in traffic, has skill to spare. The question is, do you grind him out at 11 minutes a night on the fourth line with, Barclay Goodrow, and whoever your fourth line center ends up being, or does he come down to the Barracuda and runs and guns with Max Latunoff feeding him pucks all day long?
So who's looking over the shoulder though? If I'm played on the Sharks last year, who's looking over their shoulder for Balsers at this point?
Melker Karlsson.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? Good player, really good defensive player, penalty kill, that sort of thing. And he's shown he can score goals when necessary, but that $2 million cap hit looks a little more scary when you look at his season this past year. And I mean, I know, when he was with Fair and when he was with Sorensen, I mean, that was a really good line in the playoffs, but still, I mean, for $2 million, I'd like just a little more. And I think if Balsers can come in and, like Zakk was talking about being a bottom six player, but, having a better offensive punch than some other teams' bottom sixes might have, I think that could eventually push him out of the lineup.
Yeah. And I think Barclay Goodrow. I think both those players, both of them are natural wings, right? And if you are trying to get into that rolling four lines that are all a threat and, in varying degrees, but, you put together a fourth line that has Rudy Balsers and let's say a the Barclay Goodrow that was playing real solid, responsible, but also hard-nosed offensively hockey, and then that the Finn coming over. Jerk, how do you say that again? I keep butchering it. I want to say,
I believe it's Suomela.
Suomela,
Yeah.
And if he acclimates, quickly and well, coming from, I think he played with JYP last year, if I remember right. If you get all three of those guys where they've got the skill to be a bit of a run and gun team that you can put out there for 12 minutes and not give up a ton of chances, that could be fun. And if it's, Melker or Goudreau aren't getting it done on the wing, why not?
Okay, so Vince G, question. Doug Wilson and PDB in the Q&A before the scrimmage brought up Vincent Praplin and Lucas Radil. I know next to nothing about either of these guys. Zakk, do you have any insights on them from your?
If I could jump in just really
Sure.
quick. At the rookie tournament last year, I was really not impressed with Praplin.
Agreed, 100%. Oh my god.
I remember, and I remember looking at his stats at the time and reading about him, and I thinking, okay, this could be an interesting piece. And honestly, at the rookie tournament, I was not impressed at all. I mean, he looked a little bit like Kevin LeBanc in that first year in the AHL, where he's trying to do too much, and then he turned the puck over, and it didn't appear to me like he learned his lesson.
I'm gonna poke my way back to the bench.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm not going to pretend like I've watched him at all since last year's rookie tournament, but statistically had a solid year and got a contract, which makes me think he's refined his game a little bit. But for Praplin, I would be just a little cautious based on what I saw last year.
Yeah, Praplin in the rookie games, because he was at Dev Camp and Prospect Camp,
right?
And I came away with just like, I'm not sure what he's doing here. And I would be concerned a player that, is in that mid-career range, there's for every Mike Hoffman, there is a graveyard of 1,000 players that couldn't take that step between the 24, 25, 26.
Right.
And even the Sharks didn't think much of Mike Hoffman outside of a heck of a lot of draft picks and giving away at Ottawa. So I don't know, and honestly, especially with what Pete DeBoer has said about that fourth line over the years, who knows?
Right.
To be saying anything authoritative about any of these players that are coming over from Europe and saying, oh, they've got the inside track over Rudy Balcers, who's been working with Roy Sommer, with, Mougenel, with guys that are handpicked to groom, San Jose minor prospects that have a history of coming up,
right.
And playing well and playing responsible. I'm sorry. I take that with a shaker of salt.
And you know what? Just to kind of put a comedic bow on the whole Praplin dialogue. He was point per game in the Spangler Cup this past year.
Hey, Spangler Cup's important.
Rick
Nash to San Jose.
Exactly.
To win the Spangler Cup.
All this, talking about Suomela and Gambrell, Latunov, guys like that, and, kind of thinking about how the Barracuda shakes out. Zakk, I'm curious, where do we go with Rourke Chartier from here?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Hopefully to a healthy season.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
3 head injuries in the span of 14, 15 months. That's terrifying just for him as an individual. Let's just get him. Hope he's healthy for his own sake, and then hopefully he can get back to what was a promising career.
Yeah, and I mean he looked really, when he was healthy, and even when there were questions that he might not be healthy, he looked like he was playing really well. And I was I was kind of on board with him having the inside track to be the 4C this coming year, but now with Gambrell and Suomela, it looks like he's, and I hope this is not the case, but it appears that he's starting to go the way of like a Nikolai Goldobin, a Matt Nieto, where guys are just passing him by as he's trying to figure it out.
Well,
of course, health is a concern, and that's where they're different.
Yeah,
but
right.
like I think staying healthy is the big key for him.
Yeah, I think I hate to do this, but I think you got to put Chartier and Jeremy Waugh a bit in the same bucket, where they've got the toolbox, they've got the skill, they could be NHLers one day.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether or not the health issues are going to allow them. On a guy like Jeremy Waugh, who's skating defines his game, blowing out both wheels.
Yeah,
that's bad. Rourke Chartier is a very smart two-way centerman. If you've got any kind of head issues in the NHL, even if it isn't the 90s and Scott Stevens is firmly retired, that's still a bit scary. I think those are two players that really need to have healthy seasons to get themselves back on track and even a bit of confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of swagger, because both those players deserve it. And I'm sure we all hope for, a healthy season for both of them, especially Rourke. The head injuries and all the news coming out about that stuff, it's so scary. And for such a young player to have, 3 head injuries so quick, you hope it was just a freak accident and there's never another one.
Right. Yeah. And Kurt in the chat brings up a name that, looms large with me, obviously. You don't want to see him go like the way of Paul Kariya, where just a great career just ends because you just can't get the head fixed. I mean, and Paul Kariya is not alone in that list. We've lost some really good players to concussion issues that they just couldn't bounce back from.
Right. And then the later in life stuff, right? I mean, this is
right.
21?
These are people.
Yeah, it's like,
It's unfortunate. Anyone else that we haven't really gone over that you wanted to touch on there, Zakk? I feel like we've gone through a ton of names here.
Yeah, I thought Jake McGrew had a nice little game, and I caught a bit of him with Spokane, and he was, speaking of bad knee injuries, played his way back with Spokane and put together a really nice campaign for them. And I thought looked good in that game. So that was that looked to be another good kind of foresight pick, right? And we're saying that more and more with the Sharks draft picks. They've found the Chekhoviches that fell like a brick, but they've also found a Jacob McGrew that maybe everyone was sleeping on. Some of these other players that we've talked about, like Weatherby, D+2, Keaton Middleton, I think that was a nice, invite for an older player too, that, obviously they're very familiar with, kind of the lunch pail Jacob Middleton, and his little brother didn't disappoint. So you look at some of the moves that the Sharks are doing, and there's a lot to be kind of nodding your head and saying, the picture is starting to become more clear. I think there's a much better plan in place these last couple years that we've seen kind of develop, and the players are developing along with it. Finding an Alexander True.
Yeah.
Trading for a Latunov, finding, Kotkov, and getting him, ink to paper while dev camp's still going on. Linus Carlson, I thought was
I mean, nice. They've done some really good stuff with Europe. Like, I'm excited about Suomela because of what they found in Carlson, what they found in Donskoy. So I'm that makes me really excited because I feel like, they haven't really, my issue with Melker Karlsson isn't Melker Karlsson. It's how Peter DeBoer uses Melker Karlsson.
And let's not forget that they also found Tim Heed and Radim Simek, who's going to be in the mix for the 7D, those two pretty much duking it out, right?
Mhm.
So players that I think we definitely all agree Tim He could be an NHL defender. He's just stuck on the San Jose Sharks. Rodham Shimmick, who let's play the foreseen game. Let's say that they trade Tim Heed. I think people are sleeping a bit on Jacob Middleton.
Yeah.
Jacob Middleton is the kind of defender that, you know, I feel like he's going to either be the number 8 or the number 6. I feel like Shimmick will be the number 7 all year long, and he'll play the one game it takes to get Jacob Middleton from San Jose to New York for the next game. I actually like Jacob Middleton's game right here, right now, better than Rodham Shimmick's.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
And you know what? I agree with you, Zakk, because I remember last year's prospect game and the rookie tournament. I remember being really interested to see Radim Shimmick play, and just based on how he played with his team he was on prior and how he was kind of described. And honestly, I was kind of underwhelmed, but he definitely did, you know, circle back and get things rolling in a positive way. In a positive way towards the end. But yeah, I'm with you. Like Jacob Middleton, I remember that season where they went to the West Final. I remember thinking, you know, he started as the extra and worked his way up to being on the middle pair. And you know, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, he's really solid. There's no way, you know, that he gets better from here. And then he comes in this past year, and does get better. You know, not that it matters, but he's a guy who wears a letter during games, which shows, you know, the coach obviously trusts him as a leader and to be out there in the pressure situations. And, you know, I think that, I mean, if John McCarthy's not on this team, I think Middleton is probably the guy who wears the C. And, you know, that's assuming he doesn't come up to the Sharks. But no, I agree with you. I think a lot of people do sleep on him because I think he is a really good, you know, defenseman who's not spoken about as much as he should be.
Right.
I have a question about a defenseman. I'm going to go just to the chat first. Kevin Fitzgerald, where are you at on Kevin Fitzgerald?
I thought he got better as the year went on. You know, obviously going from the Q where you know defense is suggested to the AHL where defense, is mandatory. I thought it was there were a lot of growing pains for Kevin Fitzgerald, but he got through them. And the player he was at the end of the last AHL season was nothing like the player that arrived. You know, the defense was there, wasn't quite there when we got there. Definitely tuned up. That's, you know, still that smart, understated offense was didn't get lost in the shuffle. So, you know, lot to be excited for there. That was another free agent signing, right?
Right.
You know,
where do you feel that Nick DeSimone is on the depth chart now? Because I
feel
thought
like
he had a rough season last year.
Yeah, I feel like he's really stuck on the Barracuda. You know, I'm just seeing guys that are younger and perhaps with a bit more ceiling. You know, I feel DeSimone's going to have a professional career, and it's going to be a long one. You know, I'm just not sure that it's yeah. I think he might get a couple cups of coffee, but his decision making in the neutral zone and in the defensive zone just has to improve for me.
Yeah.
He's certainly, you know, he's got a little bit of an awkward skating style, but he makes it work. He's got you know, good feet. His edges could improve. Obviously offensively, you know, he brings a good bit to the table.
Right. Rob's asking, is DeSimone the next Julius Bergman? I don't know, because I mean, DeSimone is another guy they kind of just signed. He wasn't, you know. I mean, Bergman was a second-round draft pick.
Right.
Second-round draft pick, third round, yeah, second round. I mean, the expectations with Julius Bergman were a bajillion times higher than they ever were with DeSimone.
Yeah, but they also made Julius Bergman play with Mirko Mueller.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, 2 years of that will get everyone questioning themselves.
And then he looked better than Mirko Mueller so many times that
he carried Mirko Mueller.
He did, and I think it kind of made us higher a little bit. Because I think I was a little bit higher on Julius Bergman and then Mirko Mueller was gone, and then it's like, oh, dude, just not that good after all.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair critique of our initial assessment. That it's like you're even pulling Mirko Mueller along. You have to be phenomenal,
Right?
and
And
he
it's
was
like,
like, no, he was just the better of two struggling defenders.
correct. Yeah, that was. It's fun looking back at these things. I don't know. I mean, Nick DeSimone to me is a guy who, was able to. I was always. I mean, I'm on record of being a big Nick DeSimone guy, but I mean, looking back, I think you kind of have to look at because of the team the Barracuda had that year. He was a little bit sheltered, and I think that when he had to step up and be the guy, struggled.
Yeah. Whereas Jacob Middleton, stayed at that 1D. Like he was their defender all year long for Roy Sommer. Yeah. And if I'm Nick DeSimone, you have to be absolutely terrified of whatever Mario Ferreira is doing behind you, because that's exactly who's going to step right over you into your depth chart spot and say, thank you for keeping this warm for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've pretty much run this good enough. I feel like we've gone through a lot of names without, picking on absolutely every player that was at Dev Camp, but I feel like we've covered all the important ones. Jerk, any player that you feel we may have missed that you want to discuss?
Well, it's been well documented that that Zakk and myself are fans of John Martin, and I believe he had a goal on Friday, did he not?
John Hard Work Martin once again got rewarded for that hard work. Bit of a soft goal, but you know what? A guy that shows up and lays brick all day, I don't begrudge him an easy one.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of going the same route as Barclay Goodrow, where like he's an established guy, but yet they keep bringing him back to Dev Camp. And I mean, the NHL is obviously the goal here, but I think he's, well enough placed with the Barracuda that I think he could sit out at Dev Camp and be okay.
That's another guy where I think he's going to have a long professional career. I'm just not sure it ever translates to the NHL. But you look at his body size, he skates well, has, some good bit of bank crash in his game. Isn't going to terrify a coach, right?
Right.
So he's going to be a pro for a lot of years. Just not sure it's going to tick up. Vince, looking over the chat real quick, asked about Joachim Blichfeld stealing Ian's job here.
Yeah. I don't know how I missed Blichfeld.
Yeah, he was, again, it's one game, and it's one game in the middle of July. I was hoping for a bit more out of Joachim. I've seen so much of him in Portland, so I know what he's capable of. And it just wasn't there for this one game. Doesn't mean it's not there overall, but certainly a player that you were hoping to see a bit of what we saw with Portland on surprising young team last year, but not much.
Not much. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's an important thing to remind everyone though too. Like it is one game. Like I wouldn't. It's cool to come and kind of break down based on what we've seen from guys previous to to now. But I mean, it is one game. So if a guy didn't have a great game, I wouldn't write him off because everyone has bad games. Unfortunately, sometimes they come when when eyes are on and you expect more from some players, but just because they didn't show it this game, I mean, real camp, is around the corner, a couple months away. And then that's, I think that's when you're going to really be able to make some better determinations. I mean, these things are fun, but you don't want to put too much stock. Like there's an amount of stock that you want to put in. Obviously, I think, again, seeing players' growth is important, but you don't want to just be like, oh, well, Joachim Blichfeld had a bad game, so this guy's a bust, and
And that's the other thing to remember too, is that it's a scrimmage in the beginning of the middle of the summer, and obviously you're playing to impress the team, especially if you're on a tryout. But I mean, there's no prize money or trophy or anything like that involved. So I mean, not to say that guys are dogging it out there, but I feel like Zakk said, once you get to real camp, that's when you'll be able to make a better educated statement.
And Vince in the chat, now to bring it full circle, how does this affect the Leafs? It doesn't affect the Leafs at all.
Well,
We've just wasted an hour of time.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but correct me if I'm wrong. Keaton Middleton, wasn't he a Leafs asset at one point? I could be wrong.
Ooh.
Don't do this. I would rather have wasted an hour of everyone's time by not affecting the Leafs.
I'm looking right now.
Yes, he was 2016 101st overall by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
There you go, Vince.
And so what this means for the St. John Growlers, who were looking for a 1-2 defender there in the ECHL, that now perhaps Keaton Middleton won't sign that AHL deal that I think he's deserving of. And so St. John's is going to have to look elsewhere.
Sorry, Ryan Clough.
That's a good point. Somebody tell Chloe that his lunch pail defender that they would have loved out there.
Sure now. That's amazing. Wow.
Well done, Vince.
Well done, Vince.
You found the one plug that we can wrap this up with, making it all about the Leafs.
Oh, man, that's amazing. Hockey Church, what are your final thoughts on the night, my friend?
Final thoughts. So it's kind of sad because, this is the last quote-unquote big summer event that we're going to have to break down. Unless you count August 15th as a big summer event. But that doesn't mean we're going away, because we've said, a lot of the content in the summer is going to rely on the chat.
Absolutely.
And if it's NHL, AHL, beer league, if it's hockey, we'll talk it. And it's going to be another good summer. This is going to be your only source of Sharks, Barracuda, NHL hockey podcasting goodness. So you'll want to subscribe, click the bell to make sure you get notified whenever we go live.
Absolutely.
Follow us on Twitter. You can follow me, the guy who's not a Pittsburgh Penguins fan and never would claim to be, on Twitter at hockey_jerk. And you can follow our main account. I think the @ is TTG Pod, but I could be wrong.
Tinted Pod.
There you go. Teal Tinted Pod. Boom. Plugged.
So I look forward to Hockey Jerk breaking down the Knoxville Ice Bears in the Southern Professional Hockey League's roster retool.
Hey, you know what? Magnitka signed Nikolai Kulemin and Victor Antipin, so it's going to be a great year over in Mother Russia.
Oh, man. It's amazing.
In Russia, hockey plays you.
Yep.
Vince G. TTG episode 51, live from Lacey's next beer league game. Could happen. Could happen. Might do some play-by-play.
Those scouting reports might get a little pointed.
Yeah. All right. Zakk, final thoughts that are maybe more final than I want them to be.
So I just wanted to say thank you to you guys. It's been an absolute blast joining you over the years. This is pretty much going to be my last show, my last podcast, my last tweet. I'm shutting it all down. Real life has taken over, and it's been a lot of fun. Over the years, having some really excellent conversations and making a lot of friends and talking to a lot of folks, and just really kind of diving deep and sharing my thoughts and hearing everybody else's and having some good-natured arguments and really constructive talks. But it's time for me to step away from the microphone and leave everyone with Ian and Jerk, who are more than capable and frankly quite a bit better. so they're going to be your home for all that news, and hope you guys well. I'm going to keep in touch with all of you, but it's time for me to hang up the proverbial skates. So just a big thank you to everyone. This has always been a great platform for me to get on and rant and rave for far longer than anyone cared to hear, but you're all real patient. Just thank you to everybody. Just a real big thank you to everybody, and especially all my friends there at Teal Town, USA.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, man, I'm bummed out. I was bummed out when I heard the news, but I'm honored that you know, this was the way you decided to go out talking prospect scrimmage at the, you know, in the middle of July. But yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, if you ever do get the, you know, the itch you need to scratch, we're here. I mean, the door is always open, but obviously I respect your decision. But it's definitely a voice that's going to be missed in the community.
Well, I'll be feeding you guys notes if I see anything. Keep your DMs open for me.
Always. Always.
Hey, you know, I mean, you know what? Mario Lemieux and Michael Jordan came back, so anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
That's true.
Never say never.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I am Ian Reed. You can find me on the Twitter machine at IanBlogsSharks. I will be, like I said, we're going to be here all summer, so you want to hit the subscribe button. You want to subscribe on the audio feed so you can take it with you on your phone when you're on your walk. We'll kill you with our shows because they're always really long, so I hope you like long walks.
Get those steps in, folks.
Yeah, get those steps in. Definitely. Also, on Teal Town USA, I'll be continuing writing all summer. I want to do like an off-season series. I think the next big project I want to do is going to kind of look at the Barracuda itself, since everything in Sharks Land's kind of settled for now. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming out probably next week-ish. It's gonna take a little bit to do, so it's gonna be probably next week. I think it'll probably be like a bi-weekly thing over the summer. So look for that in writing. Aside from that, guys, thanks for coming and, you know, listening to us ramble about a bunch of players that maybe some of which you've never heard of. You know, we always appreciate what you're going to. Absolutely. We always appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with us, and we hope that you guys hang out with us all summer. If you have questions that you want answered, I mean, you guys are, like Jerk said earlier, the lifeblood of the show now. So if you have things you want us to discuss, the easiest thing to do is DM me, because then they don't get lost in my notifications. But, you know, you can tweet at any of us, and we'll absolutely get back here. And also, you know, going forward to, you know, Kevin will be back too. So it's going to be good times at all.
And if the Sharks trade Chris Tierney, then Drew will be back.
And then Drew will be back. Yeah, once Chris Tierney is signed or traded, Drew will be allowed back on the show at that point.
Yeah, and he gets that Brinks truck safely to Almaden Valley.
Right. All right, guys. Again, appreciate you guys listening, watching, all the support you've given us. It's been a jam. We'll be back sooner than later, I am sure. I think we just did 2 shows like in 3 days, so we're probably going to take a little bit of a break. But if anything happens, we'll come back and talk. It'll be cool. Have a good one, guys. Bye.